The guitar case had been in my truck for 3 weeks before I finally decided to bring it. It wasn't a plan. Exactly. I was driving past the Harwell Tower on a Tuesday evening, saw the valets lined up along the curb and the white tents lit up behind the glass. Something pulled at me. My father had worked inside that building for 11 years. Played session work, arranged bridges, taught the junior staff how to notate. He never once complained about the money or the credit or any of it. He just loved the music. I thought maybe I could walk in, look at the room, and feel something I hadn't been able to put into words since we buried him 8 months ago. I had the guitar case on my passenger seat, his old Kalamazoo archtop, the one he'd carried to every session from 1961 to 1972. I pulled over, sat with it a minute, then picked it up and walked toward the entrance. The man at the door was polite about it. That's what I remember. He wasn't cruel. He glanced at my jacket, a canvas work jacket, the kind you wear when you spend your afternoons fixing radiators and hanging ceiling tiles at the Millhaven Community Center, and he looked at the guest list, and then he looked back at me. "Sir, this is an invitation-only event. The Harwell 60th Anniversary Gala." I told him my name. Ray Calloway. He ran his finger down the list twice, shook his head. "I don't think you have an invitation, sir. I'm going to have to ask you to step back." I didn't argue. There was nothing to argue. He was right. I didn't have an invitation. I just had a guitar case and a feeling I couldn't name, and neither of those got you past velvet rope. I thanked him, which surprised him, and I walked back to my truck. I sat there a few minutes with the case across my lap. Through the glass I could see the crowd moving, champagne glasses catching the light, a stage with a banner. Harwell Records, 60 years of sound. My father's 11 years of sound, somewhere's inside all of that with nobody knowing his name. I drove home. She was at the kitchen table when I came in, working through a piece on her keyboard with the headphones around her neck. 9 years old, and she already had her grandfather's ear. The way she sat still in the middle of a passage she hadn't solved yet, like she was listening for something the notes hadn't told her yet. I set the guitar case by the door and told her I'd been for a drive. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. She looked at me the way her mother used to, straight through the answer, then turned back to the keyboard and played the passage again, slower until it landed right. I watched her and felt the knot in my chest ease, just a little. The case under my bed changed into clean clothes and made us dinner. The next morning I was in the community center by 7, patching a section of drywall in the instrument storage room, when my phone rang. Unknown number with a city area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Mr. Cataway," a woman's voice. Composed, careful, the kind of voice that was used to being listened to. "My name is Diana Harwell. I'm the CEO of Harwell Records. I'd like to come see you if you're willing. Today, if possible." I set down my taping knife. She told me there'd been a routine legal review the previous afternoon, a pre-sale audit of the catalog archive ahead of a major licensing deal. One of her attorneys had flagged a discrepancy in the original 1963 registration for November Road, the song that had launched the label and still anchored their most licensed catalog package. The songwriter registration on file was incomplete. The attorney had pulled the session logs, and the session logs referenced a lead sheet submitted by the arranger of record. She paused. "The arranger's name on the session log is Thomas Calloway, your father." I sat down on an overturned bucket. She kept her voice level, but there was something underneath it. "When our attorney pulled the original document box this morning, the handwritten lead sheet was inside. We ran the signature against the submission records." Another pause. "Mr. Calloway, your father's name should be on that registration. It isn't, and it should be. That's a 60-year error that we need to correct." I didn't say anything for a moment. I was thinking about my father at his kitchen table, writing notes on staff paper with a pencil worn down to a nub, thinking about the way he'd talk about that session. 1963, a Tuesday, a room full of cigarette smoke and 2 hours of overtime. Like it was just another day at work, just the music. "He never told me," I said finally. "He mentioned the sessions. He never mentioned the registration." "No," she said quietly. "I don't think he knew it had been filed under another name. It happened sometimes, in those years." She didn't dress it up. I respected that. "I'd like to come to you if you're willing. I owe you that at least." I gave her the address, She arrived at 10:30 in a car. She drove herself. No driver, which I noted. Younger than I expected, late 40s, in a gray coat that cost more than my truck. She stood in the doorway of the instrument room and looked at the guitar case I'd propped against the wall. "Is that his?" she asked. "It is." She nodded once, the way you nod when something you already suspected turns out to be true. I had coffee made. We sat at the work table I use for repair jobs, her in the folding chair, me on the stool, and she laid out what her team had found. The original lead sheet in my father's hand, the session log with his name, the submission record where the credit had been transferred, without documentation, to the label's in-house arranger at the time. 60 years ago. Whether it had been deliberate or careless, she said. Her attorneys weren't sure. What they were sure of was that the record was wrong. She slid a folder across the table, a corrected registration, his name restored, a financial settlement figure at the bottom, 60 years of catalog royalties, calculated from the licensing records. The number made me look up at her. "That's what's owed," she said, "to your father's estate, to you as next of kin." I looked at the folder for a long time. I thought about him carrying that guitar case onto the bus every morning, about the worn-through elbow on his teaching jacket, about the way he'd told me once, without bitterness, that the music business had a long memory for the people it needed, and a short one for everyone else. He'd said it like a weather report, just the facts of the climate. He wasn't angry about it. He loved the music more than he cared about the credit. Pushed the folder back an inch. "I'll sign the corrected registration," I said. "The financial piece. I want to talk to an attorney before I touch that." I looked at her. "But there's something else." She waited. I got up and walked her down the hall to the main rehearsal room. It was empty at that hour. Rows of metal chairs. A battered upright piano against the far wall. A bulletin board thick with flyers for Saturday lessons. And the youth ensemble schedule. I stopped at the wall beside the door. "My father taught here for 9 years after the label work dried up," I said. "He taught for $40 a week and he loved every hour of it. Half the musicians in this city had their first lesson in this room. There's no record of his name anywhere in this building." She looked at the wall. "I want a plaque," I said. "His name, the dates, and one line, 'The man who wrote the bridge.'" I paused. "That's all I want today." Diana Harwell was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "We can do that." She said it like a promise, not a line, and I believed her. We walked back through the hall. At the door, she stopped and looked at the guitar case again, where it sat in a bar of morning light coming through the high window. "Did he ever play it for you?" she asked. "November Road. Every Sunday," I said. "He never named it, he just played it." She looked at me then with something that wasn't pity and wasn't guilt. It was closer to grief, the clean kind, something that couldn't be undone, only acknowledged. "He should have had the credit," she said. "A long time ago." "Yes," I said. "He should have." After she left, I went back into the instrument room and picked up my taping knife. The drywall wasn't going to patch itself. I stood there a minute first, with my hand on the guitar case, thinking about my father carrying this same case past the same kind of doors his whole life, turned away, in some rooms, welcomed in others, never making much of either. He never needed the door to know what the music was worth. I finished the wall. At 3 o'clock, Mia came in from school, dropped her backpack in the hall, and sat down at the upright piano without being asked. She played the opening bars of something I half recognized before I could name it. The bridge, slow and careful, note by note, the way her grandfather had taught me 20 years ago in this same room. I stood in the doorway and listened, and I didn't say a word.